Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Chartreuse Leprechaun. My name is Mark, your host, and it's time for that monthly update video. This started out as a quiet month around here, and then things went south. Clearly, the Leprechaun has been at work, which means this is not going to be any shorter than usual. Maybe. So let's just jump into it. Our second anniversary is this weekend. This Saturday is April 23rd, and we actually published our first ever episode on April 23rd, 2020. Last year, we decided to make our anniversary date a live stream event. So this year's episode, we will be playing Hardcore Mode of Planet Crafter. I know, Hardcore Mode exists in a lot of games. But this one is interesting because if you die, this version of Hardcore deletes your save file. But we'll talk more about all that on Saturday. Now, remember those Leprechaun story collections I mentioned last time? I said there were collections we never put together, right? Well, I knew about Plague Inc. Evolved, for which we've already published the 2 volumes, and I knew about Dismantle, and there's already 2 volumes worth of that series, and I thought maybe there was one more collection to do, right? Well, turns out there were 3. Subnautica, and that's probably going to be 3 volumes. I actually made 1 volume of that, but I'm deleting it and replacing it with the full set because I never finished the set. And then there's Hard Space Shipbreaker, and there will be 3 or 4 volumes for that, and then Stranded Deep. But there will only be 1 volume of that. And that's because we had to use the DLCs for this War of Mine as series material instead of Leprechaun stories due to, well, medical stuff. More on that later. So instead of being done posting collections in May, it's going to be June. Actually, it's probably going to be July before we run out of collected stories. But hey, that gives you an opportunity to see how much we've improved over the last 2 years and how much our gear upgrades have helped. So that's a good thing, right? Sure it is. Meanwhile, we started a new series this week, Mr. Prepper. We finally have a chance to do a full playthrough of the actual game almost a year, actually a little over a year after the beta ended. And if you watched our first episode, you know how much I'm struggling with game controls. I have no memory of how they work. I kind of feel like Gandalf in Fellowship of the Ring going through the mines of Moria. You know, when he gets to the top of the stairs, looks at the 3 doors and says, "I have no memory of this place." Yeah, it's kind of like that. Meanwhile, as I'm sure you've come to expect, there were a couple of tiny bits of tech education this month. For starters, I partially bricked my motherboard. I'll be honest, I don't keep all my drivers and stuff constantly updated, but the BIOS I had was about a year out of date, actually like 3 updates out of date, so it needed to be done, even though everything was working right. And for whatever reason, when I went to update it, the process went wrong. Now, when you update BIOS on this MSI motherboard, you should get this screen, which I got. And then you're supposed to get this screen, which I never got. But me, once again revealing my noovishness with things computer-related, didn't recognize the difference and clicked right on through. Now, I waited a while for something to happen, and eventually I gave up and shut the computer down. And I can see every one of you cringe at that statement, because if you know anything about BIOS updates, you know you are not supposed to stop the process, because if the process is not complete, it bricks the motherboard. So, needless to say, nothing worked, and yes, I even cleared CMOS. And then I disconnected the monitor from the GPU and plugged it into the motherboard, and it worked. I have no idea why. Best guess it wasn't recognizing the GPU monitor connection. Anyway, I was able to go in and restart the process. This time it all went according to plan and updated. Of course, I had to reset everything again, the fan speeds, the overclock profiles, the timing, but it worked, mostly. Crashing returned, and the temperatures were all over the place, but it worked. And of course, by the time I figured that out, I had already ordered a replacement. The old B450 motherboard was replaced with a B550 motherboard, which is actually what we should be using with our 5000 series Ryzen CPUs. So, long story short, by accident, we got another upgrade. And what is an upgrade without the Leprechaun stepping in to mess that up? I'm sure you've noticed the Windows activation watermark in the lower right corner of the screen on the last couple of our videos. Well, by changing the motherboard, Windows no longer recognizes that my version of Windows is legit and won't activate it. hence that crappy little watermark. Windows used to remember your activation key. You could even look it up on your computer, but not anymore. And lo and behold, changing components can cause your version to no longer be recognized as legit. And of course, we all hang on to our Windows keys, right? And we put them in a safe place so we won't forget them, right? And of course, we all know where that safe place is, right? Yeah, not this time. So now I have to budget in purchasing a new Windows key. Thanks a lot, Leprechaun. Thanks a lot. In much better news, we got a bunch of new games. Well, some are new, most are older. We got to take advantage of the Humble Bundles, I can't even say it, Humble Bundle Stand With Ukraine charity sale. And if my count was right, it was a total of 88 games. It was great just to be part of something like that, however minor, and I hope some of you were able to take advantage of that event and help out a great cause. You know what the best part is? This bundle was live for 1 week and raised over $20 million. The gaming community has done a lot. One news report said Fortnite raised something like $35 or $40 million in 48 hours. A bunch of studios have made their own donations. It is so awesome to see the gaming community come together to meet needs like this. It is awesome. Okay, now for health updates. Believe it or not, I actually don't have much. The major one is my left thumb. I've been having problems with my left thumb since October when I tripped while walking the dogs. And in case you're wondering, I can't pronounce the medical problem. I'll just say it's like 3 words with lots of syllables. Unfortunately, nothing has worked to help it. Physical therapy, drugs, rest, nothing. So it's another surgery, and that is scheduled for April 28th. Fortunately, it's a minor procedure. Full recovery is supposed to take just a few weeks. I can actually start using the hand and thumb the next day, they tell me, which is kind of cool. But it's going to keep me from typing for a couple of weeks, which also means no controller use. So fortunately, we've been through this before, so we know how to handle it. Instead of Leprechaun stories, I'll play a few random game episodes, and I can prep enough stuff for our regular series that there won't be any channel downtime. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens with rehab. Meanwhile, the insurance company denied letting me see my neurologist of choice. Their reasons? It's not an emergency, and they have doctors in network. It doesn't matter that their doctors are not specialists. It doesn't matter that it involves possible disability certification. From their perspective, it's not medically necessary I see that specific doctor. Logic is not their strong suit, apparently. Other than that, we're waiting for a disability hearing in June, so yeah, not a lot going on. Now, I want to take a few minutes and talk about gender. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I see all these posts and memes about gender roles, and most of it is a rejection of what are commonly called traditional gender roles. I'm not really sure where the Americanized concept of traditional gender roles came from, and if we want to get really honest, they go back a lot farther in history than America, and it isn't even just a white European thing. This goes on in a lot of cultures all over the world. As far as the church goes, it's pretty much just another concept of the pagan world that the church adopted. And there's been a lot of that throughout history, but the important thing is these concepts are not biblical. Yes, you heard me correctly. Not biblical. The idea that women do all the cooking, cleaning, and childcare with no other opportunities in life, that's not biblical. On the other hand, the expectation that men are emotionally detached warrior types who like to build houses, fix motors, and love camping, yeah, that's not biblical either. Historically, men cooked, sang, played music, wrote poems, created art, you know, the stuff the American version of a real man ridicules, laughs at, and rejects. But let's look at a couple of people in the Bible. We have King David, man after God's own heart, right? Well, he was a musician, a shepherd, a poet, and a warrior king. You could make the case also that based on 1 Samuel 21, he was a consummate actor because he convinced an entire city he was crazy and they threw him out. Or how about Bezalel? You know, the guy from Exodus 31, the guy in charge of making the temple gorgeous? Well, he was handpicked by God to be an artist, not a warrior. And then we can talk about the women. How about Deborah from the book of Judges? She was a judge and a warrior. Or we could consider Abigail from 1 Samuel 25. She took care of running her house because her husband was a fool. Proverbs 31 says women can be artisans, entrepreneurs, field buyers, in charge of their homes, learned, wise, benefactors, and a lot more. Now, I've heard the argument that the Proverbs 31 says all women should be doing all that stuff. But we know that that's physically, mentally, and emotionally impossible. We see people trying to do it all in our current world, and they're train wrecks. I believe Proverbs 31 is a list of things women can do, that they're fully capable of doing, and anyone or anything that says they can't is denying biblical truth. In the New Testament, women apparently owned houses, had businesses. Some even had important roles in various local churches, which, by the way, was all contrary to Greco-Roman culture. Do you know why these men and women excelled at their roles? It wasn't because of their gender. Gender doesn't matter when it comes to all that stuff. What mattered was their devotion to God. That's it. Just their devotion. There are limits in Scripture about who can do what, but limitations do not dehumanize anyone. For example, only Levites could be priests. That automatically eliminated huge numbers of Israelites from that role. At the same time, those limitations did not make any of those excluded less capable of greatness or less human. Well, the same is true for gender. God isn't limited by the anatomy he created. He is, however, given great freedom to do great things through the devotion and obedience of those who serve him, no matter what their gender. That's right. What matters is devotion to him, not your sex, not your skin color, not your size, not your age, not your family history, not even your screw-ups or your sin, no matter how spectacular they might be. It's not about devotion to doctrine. It's not about devotion to some social concept or trend. It's not about devotion to rules or laws. It's about devotion to him. Devotion to him is all that matters. So my question for you is, what are you devoted to? Your concept of yourself? Your concept of society? The rule of law? Those are all culturally defined. I challenge you to seek Christ and devote yourself to the living God, the one who died in your place, the one who shed his blood to break the power of sin off of your life and give you a freedom no constitution or idea of man can give you. It is sin and sin alone that separates you from the living God. So turn away from your sin and surrender to him. Be changed permanently and forever, born again to a living hope by faith through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. And I think that is going to be enough for now. Leave us a comment about today's video, what you liked, what you didn't like, and of course, leave us any suggestions you may have to help us get better, because we really do want to get better, and we'd like your feedback to help us do that. Also, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, set yourself up for notifications, all the wonderful things that keep the YouTube algorithm happy with us, and also so you don't miss anything around here. We really don't want you to miss anything around here, like our upcoming live stream on Saturday. And if you'd like to support us here at the Chartreuse Leprechaun, check out our merch and Patreon pages linked in the description below. Those are both a work in progress, word of warning to you, just like Twitter and Facebook, but hopefully we're gaining on all that. And like everything else, the Chartreuse Leprechaun is always trying to mess it up for you, for me, for everyone, so you've been warned. Keep your eyes open, and always, always, always remember, if you see it, and you can't quite explain it, you can be sure the Leprechaun did it. Now you have yourselves a great day, a great week, and we will see you here next time on the Chartreuse Leprechaun. Bye-bye.